Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. Today, I'm gonna explain an American suspenseful survival movie, called Detour. The film begins by showing a man who wakes up from his unconsciousness, named Jackson. Looks like he just had an accident. He immediately looks around, but there is no sunlight at all. In other words, his car was already buried in the ground. He tries to open his car door, but his efforts are in vain because the door is blocked. Frantically, he tries to call 911, but unfortunately his cell phone signal is not connecting at all. He then tries to find a radio frequency, but it is also not detected. He also tries to start the car's engine, but the car has already broken down. Not long after, there is a shock that causes the car to move deeper. He thinks if there is a shock like this, then he is sure that he wasn't buried in the flat ground. He also records himself using his cell phone as a form of information, in case he cannot be saved later. Feeling pessimistic about the situation, he doesn't know what to do. He also hopes that the rescue team will soon find out about this incident. Currently, the clock is showing 1 p.m., indicating that there is still a chance he will be saved. He then tries to remember what happened as he is drawing his journey on the notebook. At first, everything was fine on the trip, but there was an incident that suddenly happened to him, causing his car to get buried underground. Then he realizes the sunroof has started to crack due to the enormous pressure of the ground. Obviously, that is not a good thing, especially since he can only stay in his car and cannot do anything. The air conditioner can only emit dust, making red ants enter the car through the hole. He immediately covers the hole with masking tape. He panics even more because until now there is no sign that he will be saved. Feeling depressed, he decides to watch the video on his cell phone. His fiancée, Lori, is seen in the video. After that, he plans to sleep while conserving his cell phone battery. Long story short, he wakes up from his sleep and he realizes that it is already 9 p.m. He has been waiting underground for about 8 hours, but there is still no sign of help coming for him. Jack, who is starting to get short of breath, tries to find an opening so he can breathe freely. When he opens his car window, the dirt spills out and gets inside. The soil texture is also still wet and soft, indicating a mudslide. Meanwhile, the cracks in his sunroof are getting worse. He immediately patches the glass with the masking tape. He also uses a steering wheel lock to hold the mass off the ground. Fortunately, the way he does it is quite effective. He then unconsciously drinks the water until it runs out. He just realizes that it is the only water he currently has. He starts to pray at that time. When he finishes, he realizes that praying alone is not enough, but he has to do his best to get out of there. Suddenly, he gets an idea to check his luggage and find some useful things. He initially drinks the water dripping from the ground. Back then, he doesn't care whether the water is safe to drink or not. He then makes a small hole in the sunroof to hold the water in his empty bottle. It feels very bad as Jack has to pee in his own car. Soon, he takes some parts from his car seat to make some iron pipes. He then makes another hole in the sunroof to allow the pipes to penetrate upwards. Jack takes the bottle cap to make a hole in it and ties it with rope to keep the pipe straight up. Before continuing with his work, he eats the only biscuit to stifle his hunger. He also drinks the contaminated water that has been accommodated earlier. After eating, he continues to push the pipe up. The depletion of oxygen forces him to make a hole for breathing. After seeing the light outside, he immediately checks the depth of the ground with the rope he made before. Apparently, the ground above is approximately 3 meters deep. He shouts as loudly as he can, with hope that someone will hear him as he breathes through the hole. Then he has another idea by making smoke through the pipe, so the smoke can be seen by the others, but then the fire gets bigger and out of control. Fortunately, he still can extinguish the fire. When he wants to check the hole, there is another shock that makes his head hit the iron pipe, making him unconscious for a while. Shortly after, he wakes up with a sore head. He immediately removes his shirt and belt as a bandage to stop the bleeding. As the result, he can only sit limply, thinking of ways to survive. A few hours later, Jack's head wound is seen oozing pus, indicating that the wound is infected. Suddenly, there is another shock that makes the back of his car begin to collapse. Inevitably, he has to hold up the back of his car with the rest of the iron pipes. Jack, who feels very thirsty, has to drink his own urine. He then takes the car tires and plugs it into the pump hose to keep him breathing from the air inside the tire. In desperation, he decides to dig the ground above him to get out of the place. He also applies oil all over his body to keep it slippery when it penetrates the hard ground. This decision is made purposely by him to survive, even though he is not sure either. Furthermore, he immediately destroys the sunroof so the ground above it can descend into his car. While carrying the car tires to breathe, Jack slowly tries to dig up the ground. At some point, he is finally able to stand on top of his car. On the other hand, the air in the car tires is getting thinner. But suddenly, for the umpteenth time, there is another shock that makes his whole body covered with dirt. Amazingly, there is little movement that indicates Jack is still alive. After a long time, he manages to reach the ground and he also can see the sunlight again. In the end, he manages to survive the mudslide he has just experienced. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.